For 34 years, Ruth cooked Sunday dinners for a house full of voices. Her children, her grandchildren, sometimes neighbors who had nowhere else to go. Laughter and stories filled every corner of her kitchen. But now, that same kitchen sits quiet and cluttered. Cabinets stuffed, counters buried. Every drawer holds something she once needed or once loved. It is not just a space, it is a time capsule of her life. She used to think letting go would feel like betrayal, as if clearing out the kitchen meant clearing out the memories, the meaning, the love. But then, something shifted. Something no decluttering book had ever told her. Today, we walk alongside Ruth. She is not just tidying up. She is gently, bravely, rewriting what it means to move forward. Using 7 soulful breakthroughs, Ruth discovered how to let go with grace and live again with hope. And if you've ever walked into a room and felt that weight on your chest, not from age or illness, but from too many years of just in case, then this journey is for you. Because this is not about empty shelves or clean counters. This is about clearing the space inside yourself, so you can finally breathe. Let's begin. Hack 1. The next chapter test. Ask yourself this simple question. Does this item serve the person I want to be? Or is it anchoring me to a past I've already lived? That's what Ruth asked herself one quiet morning as she stood in her kitchen, surrounded by casserole dishes she hadn't used in years, mismatched mugs from long-forgotten trips, and an electric carving knife that hadn't touched a turkey in more than a decade. Her cabinets were full, her counters cluttered, but her life? It was changing. Her children had moved out long ago. The big dinners were over. And though the memories were precious, they no longer needed to live in every square inch of her home. Ruth wanted to travel. She dreamed of growing her garden, of hosting small book club afternoons with her neighbors, not lugging out 12 serving trays for meals that no longer happened. So, she began. She looked at each item and whispered, "Does this belong in the next chapter of my life?" If the answer was no, she thanked it and let it go. She kept the tea kettle she used every morning. She gave away the bread machine she never liked. She boxed up the fondue set her daughter always rolled her eyes at. And the result? Her kitchen felt peaceful, spacious, like a space meant for her, not a museum of who she once was. If you're holding on to things that belong to your past self, ask, who are you becoming? What does that version of you need in her space? That's where freedom begins. Hack 2. The 8-minute miracle. Let me ask you something. Have you ever set out to clean one drawer and ended up sitting in the middle of the room, surrounded by a mountain of stuff, too tired to finish? Ruth had done that more times than she could count. She'd start with good intentions. Today, I'm tackling the hall closet. But 3 hours later, she'd barely made a dent. Her back would ache, and her spirit would sink. That's when she learned about decision fatigue. As we get older, our energy doesn't just drop physically, it drops mentally. Our brains tire faster, especially when we're making choice after choice after choice. So Ruth made a rule: no more decluttering marathons. From now on, she'd do it in focused sprints. She called it the 8-minute miracle. Here's how it works. Set a timer, 8 minutes only. Choose one small space, a single drawer, one cabinet, a single shelf. And when the timer buzzes, you stop. No matter what, you rest. You reward yourself. Maybe you make tea. Maybe you call a friend, or maybe you just sit and enjoy the small victory. The beauty is, 8 minutes is short enough that it feels doable, even on a tired day. But it's long enough to make a visible difference. Ruth tried it on her bathroom cabinet first. In 8 minutes, she tossed out expired vitamins, lotions from 20 years ago, and half-used shampoos that had gone sticky with age. She didn't just clean a shelf, she created momentum. And that's the real miracle. She started looking forward to her 8-minute sessions because each one was a promise. You don't have to do it all. You just have to begin. If you've been putting off decluttering because it feels too big, try this. 1 drawer, 8 minutes, 1 win, and then celebrate it. Hack 3. Gratitude goodbyes. This one changed everything for Ruth. Not just how she let go of things, but how she felt about letting go. You see, most of us older adults were raised to believe that throwing something away was wasteful, that donating a gift was ungrateful, that if something came from someone we loved, we had to keep it forever. Even if it sat in a box for 20 years, even if it never served us again. But Ruth discovered something powerful. You can say goodbye with gratitude. She called it the gratitude goodbye. Before she donated or tossed an item, she paused. She looked at it. She remembered what it meant. And then she said softly, "Thank you for your service. I release you now." One day, she stood in front of her husband's old sweaters. He had passed 5 years earlier. She hadn't worn them. She hadn't touched them. But she also hadn't let them go. They still smelled faintly of his aftershave. Her heart ached. But this time, she didn't rush. She held each one. She remembered the evenings by the fire, the walks around the block, the way he'd pull the sleeves over his hands when he got cold. She smiled. She cried. She whispered her goodbye. And then, she donated them to a local men's shelter where they would warm someone else, not out of guilt, but out of love. She did the same with her children's old toys, photographing each one before donating. She even created a digital memory album to share with them. That's the secret. Letting go doesn't mean erasing the past. It means honoring it and moving forward with peace. If you've been stuck, try this. Pick one thing, one item you've held onto out of guilt or fear. Hold it, thank it, then release it. You'll be amazed how peaceful it feels to close a chapter with grace. Hack 4. The outsider test. This one's a little uncomfortable, but it works like magic. Ruth discovered it by accident during a conversation with her granddaughter. They were going through boxes in the attic, boxes Ruth hadn't opened in years. Inside were old party supplies, broken lamps, piles of greeting cards, and a dusty fondue pot from a single dinner party back in 1987. Her granddaughter picked up a cracked ceramic bowl and asked, "Grandma, why do you still have this?" Ruth opened her mouth to answer, and then stopped. She realized she didn't really know. That's when the question hit her. If a stranger walked into this space, would they understand why I kept this? Or would they think I was simply overwhelmed by clutter? And so, she created the outsider test. It's simple. When you're unsure about something, imagine you've passed it on to someone else, someone who doesn't know the full story. Would they see meaning in it, or just see mess? Take Ruth's attic, for example. She had a collection of dried flower arrangements from funerals and weddings, now crumbling into dust. She had arts and crafts supplies from hobbies she never actually pursued. She even had stacks of magazines, just in case she ever wanted to read about how to decorate for Easter. In 2004, she started looking at each item through a stranger's eyes, not to judge herself, but to gain clarity. And it helped? She asked, would a stranger keep 15 chipped mugs? No. Would they hold on to 3 old vacuums, none of which worked? Definitely not. The beauty of the outsider test is that it cuts through emotional fog. It gives you the distance you sometimes need to see things clearly. Of course, there are things a stranger wouldn't understand, but you do. Those are the items worth preserving. A love letter from your husband, a hand-knitted baby blanket, a recipe in your mother's handwriting. But the broken Christmas lights, the piles of instruction manuals, the old souvenir keychains from a trip you barely remember? Let them go, with kindness, with courage. And if it helps, write this on a sticky note and place it near the space you're decluttering. Would I keep this if I had to explain it to someone who never knew me? That one question could help you release 100 items and gain back peace you didn't know you'd lost. Hack 5. The energy scale. By this point, Ruth had let go of dozens of things, but she started to notice something unexpected. It wasn't the heavy boxes that wore her down the most. It was the emotional weight of deciding. Every drawer, every closet, every shelf came with 1,000 tiny questions. Do I need this? What if I'll regret it? Who gave it to me? What if it meant something and I'm forgetting? That's when she invented something that changed everything: the energy scale. Here's how it works. For each item, Ruth gave it a number from 1 to 10. A 1 meant no emotional attachment at all. This could go in the trash right now. A 10 meant deeply meaningful. It connects me to something or someone I never want to forget. She didn't overthink it. She trusted her first feeling. The rating wasn't about money or usefulness. It was about how much emotional energy she was spending on that item, consciously or not. Ruth tested this in her closet. She had more than 50 dresses. She only wore 5 or 6 regularly. Many hadn't fit in years. Some still had tags. Others reminded her of old jobs or weddings that felt like another life. One by one, she rated them. The comfortable navy dress she wore to church every week, that was a 9. The red blazer that pinched her shoulders and reminded her of stressful meetings, that was a 2. The rating helped her realize something profound. She was giving closet space and emotional space to items that no longer deserved it. She donated everything that scored below a 4. It was liberating. Then she moved to her bookshelf. Paperback thrillers she'd already read? Rated 1. Out they went. Her mother's gardening journal, with notes scribbled in fading ink? A 10. She placed it carefully in an archival box. The energy scale also helped with papers, tax forms, old warranties, expired coupons. Most rated a 1 or 2. Ruth shredded and recycled with confidence. Here's what she realized. Emotional energy is limited, especially in our later years, and we owe it to ourselves to spend it wisely. If you've ever stood in a room and thought, I just don't have it in me today, try the scale. Don't organize. Don't clean. Just pick 10 items and give each one a number. You'll be amazed how quickly the path becomes clear. Because sometimes it's not the clutter you need to deal with. It's the emotional weight hiding inside it. Hack 6. The brutal sort. This was the turning point for Ruth. The moment she stopped trying to be gentle with her stuff and started being honest. You see, for years, she'd followed advice that said, take your time, hold each item, wait until it feels right. And while that worked for some things, it also kept her stuck. Weeks would pass, then months, and entire rooms stayed just as cluttered as before. Until one day, a neighbor told her something that changed everything. You know how emergency medics decide who to treat first? The woman asked. They don't have time to debate. They make split-second calls to save lives. That's how you need to sort your stuff. Brutally, quickly. No, maybe pile. That idea struck Ruth like lightning. She called it the brutal sort. Here's how it works. You take everything in a space, say a drawer, a shelf, or a corner of the room, and in 10 minutes, you divide it into 3 clear categories. Category 1, must keep. These are essential items, things you use daily or deeply love. Think medications, important documents, or your favorite coffee mug. Category 2, haven't used in over a year, gone, no second chances. Category 3, maybe. And this is the twist. You treat maybe like no. That was the game changer. Ruth realized that maybe was just fear dressed up as logic. Fear of needing it someday. Fear of making a mistake. But that fear was costing her far more than any item ever had. She started in her guest room closet. In 10 minutes, she found 2 unopened comforter sets, a stack of towels still in plastic wrap, and 4 boxes labeled Miss Key. She asked herself, had she used them? No. Did she even remember buying them? Barely. Out they went. The speed forced her to rely on instinct, not debate. And it felt good. It felt freeing. Then she tackled her kitchen drawers. She had 3 garlic presses, 6 sets of measuring spoons, a melon baller she had never used. None of them had touched a cutting board in over a year. So she kept her favorite knife and a small set of utensils and donated the rest. The brutal sort made it easy to move room by room without burnout. Each time she gave herself just 10 minutes. No perfection, no paralysis, just decisions. And the results? Immediate. Clear surfaces, empty drawers. A sense of progress she hadn't felt in years. If you've been stuck in the maybe zone, holding on just in case, try this. No more maybes, no more debating. Be your own emergency medic. Save what matters. Let go of the rest. Because peace doesn't come from organizing clutter. It comes from releasing it. Hack 7. The cost of clutter. By now, Ruth's home was noticeably lighter. Rooms felt calmer. Closets opened without fear of an avalanche. But even as she cleared space, one question kept creeping into her mind. What if I need this later? It's the most common roadblock we all face. That voice that says, don't throw that away. You might regret it. For Ruth, it often sounded like her late mother. Save that, you never know, she'd say. And in the past, Ruth listened. She kept dozens of items she hadn't touched in years, just in case. Until she created a simple 3-question test. She called it the Cost of Clutter check. Here's how it worked. Every time Ruth hesitated over something, an old lamp, an extra blender, a pile of cables, she paused and asked, first, if I got rid of this and suddenly needed it again, could I replace it? Second, how much would that actually cost me in dollars, time, or effort? Third, when did I last use it? Not when I planned to, but when I really did. These questions were like truth serum. She looked at an old juicer, still in its box, bought during a health kick that lasted about a week. She hadn't touched it in over 10 years. Could she replace it? Yes, for under $30 at a secondhand store. Would she? Probably not. It went. Then there was the extra office chair, stacked in the garage. She kept it for when guests come over, but no one had used it since 2015. Could she replace it if needed? Yes. And in the meantime, it was just taking up space. Out it went. Even furniture wasn't off limits. Ruth had kept an old love seat just in case someone needed to stay over. But no one had. In 6 years. It was dusty, uncomfortable, and sat where she could barely maneuver her vacuum. She donated it to a local family in need, and instantly, her living room felt twice as big. The Cost of Clutter check gave her a new kind of clarity. It wasn't about what she might lose. It was about what she was already sacrificing every day: peace of mind, physical space, and the energy to enjoy what really mattered. If money is a concern, and for many seniors it is, this method still works. Ask yourself, if I haven't used it in years, is it truly saving me money? Or is it costing me peace? You can even make a list. Write down 3 things you're keeping, just in case. Then research the cost of replacing each one. You might be surprised. Often, it's less than $15. Sometimes even less than $5. And the real cost? It's not the money. It's the way these items weigh on your heart. Letting go doesn't mean recklessness. It means trusting that your future won't be built on old extension cords or broken clocks. It will be built on freedom. The power of a decluttering partner. Ruth was doing well. She had made more progress than she ever imagined. But some days, she still got stuck. She'd open a box, pull out an old apron or a faded Christmas ornament, and just sit there, frozen. Not because the item was useful, but because it held a memory, and that memory pulled her back. That's when her neighbor June stopped by. June was 78, a retired nurse, sharp as a tack and full of stories. When Ruth mentioned her decluttering journey, June smiled and said, "Honey, you don't have to do this alone." The next Saturday, they made tea, put on music, and started sorting through Ruth's living room together. Not rushing, not judging, just witnessing. When Ruth picked up a chipped music box her son had given her in 4th grade, she hesitated. "I remember the way he wrapped it," she said. "Used half a roll of tape." June didn't say, "Toss it," or "You should keep it." She just listened. And in that moment, Ruth realized something powerful. Sometimes the hardest part of letting go is feeling like no one else saw the meaning. But when someone does, when someone hears the story or holds the item or says, "That must have meant a lot," you don't need to keep it anymore. The memory has been shared, honored, released. So Ruth started inviting people in. Her daughter, her grandson, a neighbor from church, not to help her clean, but to walk the journey with her, to laugh about old habits, to cry over what was gone, to turn decluttering into connection. If you're feeling stuck, call someone. Not to do the heavy lifting, but to witness your story. Share one item, one memory. You might find that what you really needed was to be heard. Ruth's transformation. 3 months later. 3 months after she finished decluttering, Ruth sent me a postcard. A picture of a tiny cafe in Florence, Italy. On the back, in her delicate script, she wrote, "I didn't just clear my house. I cleared the runway for my life to take off." It gave me goosebumps. She'd done it. After years of holding on, of feeling stuck, of living in the past, Ruth had stepped into her next chapter. Not by magic, not overnight, but with clarity, courage, and a few trash bags. So, what did her life look like now? For one, she joined a local photography class. She said she always loved pictures, but never knew how to take them. Now, she carries a camera everywhere. Her home, once cluttered with boxes, is now filled with prints she's taken herself. Sunlight hitting the garden, a little boy eating ice cream, her neighbor June smiling from a porch swing. She also joined a book club at the senior center. "I didn't realize how much I missed discussing ideas," she told me. "Not just surviving the day, but really thinking again." And perhaps most remarkably, she booked her first solo trip. Italy. A dream she had since she was 25, but put off for work, marriage, children. She saved, she planned, and she went. Alone, at 72. She stood in front of the Duomo in Florence, tears in her eyes, knowing she had made room, not just in her suitcase, but in her life, for wonder again. That's the power of letting go. Not to create emptiness, but to make space for joy. So, if you're still surrounded by things that whisper, "Someday," ask yourself, what if someday is now? Letting go, moving forward. So here we are. We've walked through 7 soulful breakthroughs. We've stood beside Ruth as she held old sweaters and photographs, laughed with friends, cried in silence, and made decision after decision. Not just with her hands, but with her heart. And maybe, just maybe, You saw a little bit of yourself in her story. Maybe it's the boxes in your garage, the coats in your hall closet, the papers you meant to sort next week for the last 5 years. Maybe it's not the stuff that's heavy. It's what it all represents. But here's the truth. You are not defined by your belongings. You are not bound to your past. And you are not alone. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means honoring what's been, while making space for what could be. Because the next chapter of your life, it's waiting. Whether it's a quiet home that finally breathes, or a long postponed dream finally lived, it begins with one drawer. One box, one brave choice, so take it. Today, not all of it, just one step. And when you do, leave a comment and share what you're letting go of. Your story might give someone else the courage to begin. If this video spoke to your heart, subscribe and come back next week. We're building a community here. One decision, one story, one wise elder at a time. Thank you for being here. And remember, you're not decluttering a home. You're setting your spirit free.